seabirds and stars. No GPS back then to get them across the Pacific. Quite a feat of navigation to actually to come to New Zealand. They settled mainly in the North Island because, contrary to the Northern Hemisphere, where if you want to go somewhere warmer, you go south. Here in New Zealand, if you want to go warmer, you go north. So they settled in the North Island because it was warmer and because there was an abundance of seafood in and around the coast. In fact, there was one tribe that really had rohi, or guardianship of the most of the South Island, and that tribe's called Ngātahu, and we'll talk about that a wee bit later, as far as how that all worked. Maori did come to the Whakatipu Basin here, but they never lived here permanently. They'd come here in the summer, and their main purpose to coming here was to go together. The Maori chiefs gave over sovereignty of New Zealand to the British Crown, and they did this because what had happened in the meantime between James Cook discovering or exploring New Zealand and this was that muskets had arrived in New Zealand, and some entrepreneurs had bought muskets and they'd sold them to the odd one or two tribes. And of course, those tribes were going around annihilating other tribes that were still doing hand-to-hand combat. So they ceded sovereignty over to the British Crown. The treaty talked about governance, of how the country would be governed, and it was basically Maori were to be involved in the governance of New Zealand. It talked about how the land was to be purchased off Maori for English settlement. New Zealand was young and they had not been voted and become good mates, and they were actually living in Dunedin at the time. But they both thought, well, this sounds a good idea. So they basically bush bashed their way up the Clutha River. It took them over 3 weeks to get to Wanaka. Then they came from Wanaka and up the Cardrona Valley and stood on the top of the Crown Range up behind us, and they looked out over the Whakatipu Basin and decided that this was the place for them. So they went back down and staked their claim, found some merino sheep and a few stores, and then drove those sheep up into this basin and started farming. That was in 1857. That wasn't the peaceful existence they were enjoying wasn't to last long, because in 1862 a young Maori fellow, Jack Tiwa, who was a shearer and shepherd for William Rees, on a Sunday afternoon off, he was up the Arrow River, walking up the Arrow River with his dog, and the dog had gone in for a swim. Then the dog came out and of course did what dogs do when they come out of water. He shook himself. But what Jack Tiwa saw was that when he shook himself, there were these bright gold specks that came flying out of the dog's fur, and so he went to further investigate and found that these were indeed flecks of gold. He came rushing back and told William Rees, and William Rees suggested to Jack that perhaps they just keep that news to themselves for a couple of weeks while they get themselves organised. But of course, Jack Tiwa, being a young man, couldn't keep his trap shut, and virtually within days, the world knew that there was gold here in central Otago. So this valley went from having about 8 people living in it to having up to 6,000 people living under canvas. Firstly in the Arrow town, and then secondly up in what we call Skippers, which is the top of the Shotover River. The Shotover River is the world's second largest gold-bearing river for about 20 or 30 years. It was just too hard. So during that period, this lake was serviced by coal-fired steamships. 4 or 5 of them used to ply this lake. The 4 were quite small, but one was quite large, and I'll talk a wee bit more about that when we get to Kingston. I can't tell you why it's called the Devil's Staircase. it's been suggested to me it's just that simply was that in the middle of winter, this was a very hard place to build a road. On the way home, you get a better view of it. Side behind the Kingston Flyer. Here she was assembled, and in 1912 she had her maiden voyage on the lake here. And she'd take everything from people to draft horses to wool, absolutely anything at all she'd carry in and around the Wakatipu Basin here. Of course, when they did put the road through, suddenly her services were restricted to servicing the high country sheep stations, which are the land on the across the lake from us when we're driving down the lake, or the land that you see when you look across the lake from Queenstown. So she was to continue to service those stations, but then in the 1950s she was purchased and started doing basically cruises on the lake for tourists. And in fact, she's still operating today. In fact, she's one of the few coal-fired steamships operating in the southern hemisphere. She goes cruises around the lake, but also goes over to Waterpeak Station, which is so traditionally there was merinos in the high country, and there was the farmers on the flats here farmed combination of sheep and beef. The traditional breeds in New Zealand for beef are the Hereford, those brown cows you saw back there with the white faces. They come from North America, and then we've got the Scottish Black Angus. They're a small framed beef animal, but we like them because you can get them away. You can feed them on pasture and get them away before that second winter to slaughter. We do have other breeds, the bigger breeds, the Simmental and the Charolais. It's thought there's over 80 million of the brutes in our forests and farmland. So New Zealand's still is a beautiful country with some beautiful plants and animals, but we are only second to Hawaii for the country that has had the most species go extinct or threatened species. Of course, it's it'd be too easy to criticise those people that brought those you look left as we go around the roundabout, you'll see the model of the takahe. It's a wee bit bigger than the bird. The bird's only the same size as a chicken. On the left also is Miles' better pies. The New Zealand pie is a wee bit of a New Zealand icon. Imagine a pastry basket filled with gravy and meat with a pastry top. That's the New Zealand pie, and that's a particularly they're particularly good pies. There are pies where we're stopping, if you'd like. Anyone needs anything nasty? So we'll soon be joining, following the Eglinton River. The Eglinton River will follow all the way from all the way up to the main divide where we cross over to the west coast. You can see the sheep on the left hand side have just been shorn. New Zealand sheep farmers shear their sheep once a year and then they crutch them a second time. These lowland sheep farmers, of course, such a low cost, low value of the wool. Sometimes the cost of shearing all the wool, the value of the wool they are shearing is battle on in the free market since then. At the same time, they actually did subsidise the clearance of land to develop into farmland, and again that certainly worked. But it did actually mean that a whole lot of land got developed, which really was marginal for farming and really would have been better left in forests. And some of that land you can see on the left hand side here, it's just the soils just aren't deep enough to support good pasture. These trees on the right hand side, these palm looking trees, that's the New Zealand cabbage tree. That's synonymous with New Zealand, and they've become very popular overseas as a garden ornamental tree, and they certainly are a wonderful tree. And the Maori believe that the wool shed, or the shearing shed on the left hand side, is the most westerly shed in New Zealand, and it signals that we are now going to farewell the farming. We're going to farewell the highly modified farmland and into the Fiordland National Park. Fiordland National Park was first formed into a reserve in 1912 and then into a national park in 1940. So Mirror Lakes is on the fringe of the wetland. Wetlands are very important to the ecosystems, and this is the Eglinton wetland, and it's just wetlands are just diverse with animals and plants, and this is no different. So when you go on your walk, look out for the native black scorp, steep, small, vast, and full of big boulders. People, kayakers will actually, extreme whitewater kayakers will actually kayak this river when it's in mid-flow. It is some of the purest water in the world. And that's because lack of development, but also when you get 6 to 9 metres of rain in the hills around about, it washes everything down to sea. So you people have come on a bluebird day. So you can see where the, look at the river, you can see where the water gets up to when it's in full flow. This is low flow. On the west coast, if it doesn't rain for 5 days, they announce that it's a drought.
Creo que es un colega.
1936, and by 1934 they'd reached the site of the Homer Tunnel. And I'll talk a wee bit more about the building of the tunnel shortly. So as we're approaching the upper reaches of the Hollyford River, you can see the sheer power of the glacial force on the likes of this mountain straight ahead of us. That's all being carved out by glaciers.
Completamente fuori al muso. C'è di sono nel vuoto e ti deve stare là. Ok, sono arrivato.
Immaginate una valanga ora.
Eh sì, soprattutto senza neve.
La vedi di arrivare.
Una frana ora.
Allora, questo è lo zappato.
Una faraona.
Thank